Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Doing well. I appreciate you joining us. I was telling Sergeant Murphy just earlier today that I really truly appreciate this, and I know the students do too. Just because, I mean, you guys are in Atlanta and we are in Southeast Iowa, and it's a small community, and West Burlington Independent School District is around about 1,000 kids, K through 12. So really, I do appreciate it because, when I was originally, I guess I was fishing, trying to find a police department that in a larger area. I really didn't think I would get such a great response for such a small community that, to be honest, I mean, myself and I would imagine most of my students aren't going to be in the Atlanta community and aren't going to really, you probably never run into you folks. But Sergeant Murphy said, the more the better. Just educating and discussing, that's the way to do it, and I think that's awesome. So I really, really do appreciate it. I'm letting in a couple more people now. With this discussion, I typed out and I sent you guys some just some questions. My students came up with some really great questions. There were a lot of repeat ones, so I kind of broke them down a little bit. And it's really what I'd like to start off with is just if you guys could introduce yourselves, go into a little bit about like your history on the force, what you're doing, what you're seeing, and then I would really enjoy, and it's up to you. You don't have to answer all these questions, but I know the students may have some. But these were kind of the main ideas that I wanted to that I think are really kind of stood out when it comes to questions. So if one of Sergeant Murphy, or is it Mr. Officer Watson? Is it officer? Is it chief? Is it lieutenant? Captain? President?
Officer Watson.
Officer Watson. Okay. So yes, if sergeant or officer, if you guys want to start kind of going to your background, that would be great.
Sure, I'll go ahead and start. I'm trying to help make sure Watson's sound is good. But hey guys, I am Sergeant CJ Murphy. I am a sergeant with the Atlanta Police Department, as you guys know. I've been with the force for about 11 years. I'm originally from Atlanta, born and raised, so I am very, very, very invested in the city. It means a lot to me. I've had a good career in 11 years. I started off in Zone 5. Zone 5 is actually the heart of downtown. It's where our stadiums are, most of the tourist attractions, that district. I started off there on morning watch, which is the overnight shift. I was also a boulevard car, a warrant detail car. Boulevard was at that time a kind of a bad area with high crime area. So I was assigned to that unit. From my career, I was the LGBT liaison for APD. I was worked in the gang unit. I worked undercover for 2 years. I was also a homicide detective for 2 years. And I currently am assigned to the City of Atlanta Police Academy. I'm in charge of training the recruits. We have about 3 classes of recruits going on right now. And I am the supervisor of the recruit unit. Myself and Officer Watson, we serve on what's called the Civil Disturbance Unit. You guys may see us on the news sometimes. We are actually the ones that wear the helmets and the shields and the tactical gear. Officer Watson and I are both on that team together. I'm one of the supervisors of that squad.
Before I begin, can y'all hear me well? Okay, perfect. My name is Officer Watson. I've been on with the department for 4 years now. I've been assigned to one of the 6 zones, also known as Zone 3. I patrol, I answer 911 calls, and I'm really big on community policing. That's what I love. I love getting out, speaking to everyone. Also, this year in the month of January, I also became a field training officer, which means that when the officers are done with the academy on the first phase of the academy, they come out into the field, and I train officers to be able to train them how to be the police. And that's what I've been doing for the past 4 years, actually. I'm new, so 4 years. But I definitely have some very ambitious goals I have within the department.
Did you grow up in the area then?
Yes, I actually am from Atlanta. I was born and raised here in Atlanta, Georgia. I was born at Grady Hospital. I'm 29 years old, and I love Atlanta.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So, Rhonda, did you want to, I don't know if your audio works. Did you want to, I don't know if you mentioned that, if your audio is working or not. If you want to introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I sent everyone a little message on the side, but I'm Rhonda Frost. I'm the Deputy Director of Public Affairs. I also have a background in law enforcement. I worked for 15 years with the California Department of Corrections. Can you guys hear me okay? I started as a correctional officer at San Quentin and worked my way up to captain, and also served as public information officer for 2 of the largest prisons out in California. So that's all about me.
Okay. Well, thank you. Was there any, I mean, when you guys kind of looked over the sheet, was there a question or something that kind of popped out that you're like, well, we have to cover this? Was there something that really kind of struck you that you really like to kind of start off with?
I mean, honestly, they're all really good questions. I don't know if Watson is I think we're kind of on the same page. We can start at the top and just work our way through.
All the way through.
Let's just get it. So do the kids have the actual copy of the questions that we have, or do we need to read the questions?
They have the copies.
They have it? Okay.
Yeah.
Start off with number 1. What is the criteria for determining if an officer used unreasonable force during an encounter with a citizen? So there's a lot that goes into that. A lot. So once an officer uses force, we have to do what's called, supervisors have to do what's called a use of force report. I actually have one of those right here in front of me. We not only talk about the incident and what happened, we talk about how the call came up, what was the call, was it a violent call, was it just a regular encounter, what did the radio traffic sound like? We review body cam footage. We also look to see what type of force was used. There are different types of force. If the officer used their OC spray, the acid baton, if they went hand on, if the gun was actually discharged in full, if deadly force was used. So there are a lot of things that go into that. We look at determining if the force was reasonable and necessary, meaning was the officer's life in danger? Was someone else's life in danger? Different things of that nature. So this question, there's so much that goes into that. Like, we review the body cam footage. What was it at night? Was it during the day? Could the officer see? Was the officer able to give verbal commands? Was there a chance to give verbal commands? Because use of force can be used in a lot of different circumstances. We can get a call that's easily a shoplifting call, and then we can start to get out the car and somebody may start shooting at us. Or we can get a call that we're just having a normal citizen encounter, just talking to someone. Maybe they're having a mental crisis, or they haven't been taking their medication and then turns violent all of a sudden. So we could get a call, 911 call, to come in and say, hey, we see a couple arguing. Never said anything about a weapon. Then we get on scene and it could escalate and just that fast. So when we have use of force incidents, to determine whether or not they're unreasonable, we have to look at all of those factors. And that's part of the issues that we come into, especially as police officers. is making split-second decisions based on a totality of circumstances that we receive, but the public oftentimes does not get the same information that we have. So that's why a lot of the criticism and things that happen with police and the citizens when we just want to work together happens. It's the information that is put out between the media. And sometimes, guys, when things happen, we're not allowed to talk about them because it's a pending investigation. So although there's more information that needs to be released, we're not always allowed to release that information at that point in time. So the narrative of those use of force and incidents are kind of controlled by the public until we can speak on it, if that makes sense.
And just a quick question: are they asking us questions, like statements throughout while we're answering the questions, or we're just going straight through them?
I think you can go through it, but if a student has maybe a question that kind of pops in their head, they're more than welcome. I just want to make sure that's okay with you guys. I told them kind of keep the audio off and let the professionals do what they need to do. But if that's okay with you and they want to chime in, then that's great.
Yeah. I got the chat open, Watson. So if somebody has a question, they can pop it over there, and I can blurt it out to you.
Okay. I go to question number 2.
Yeah, I'll let you start that one.
All right, Brian. Brian asks, have you ever worked with an officer who is openly racist? If so, how did you balance your personal feelings and professional relationship? Brian, I have never encountered an officer that's racist. Never witnessed it. I actually never heard about it, truthfully. But I know you said, if so, how did you balance your opinion? So I would say, if in fact I did, I would definitely seek out patterns through that officer just to make sure that what I see is what I see. Because I don't want to, just say this person is racist and they're not. They probably had a moment or something. I don't know what it may be, but I would want to focus on the officer to see the patterns of that individual officer. And then when I come up with the pattern of this, this is who this person is, then that's when I can go to that officer and we can have a nice discussion. So that would be
piggybacking off of Watson. So I have not experienced an officer who's openly racist personally, but I have had someone report to me that an officer was pulling over primarily Hispanic citizens. As myself and as Watson becomes a supervisor, like he said, we would have to do an investigation to see if that's true. If that's true, then you're no longer wanted in the Atlanta Police Department at all. There's no tolerance for racist police officers here. Atlanta is very diverse, and one part of the things we want you guys to know is our police department. Most of our police officers are predominantly African American, so we're not like a lot of other small jurisdictions. What you see before you, Watson and myself, are a pretty good representation of what the department reflects. But if we were to find out an officer was racist, they would be gone. Like we, even in the academy, if a recruit displays any biases, they are dismissed. That's it. No questions, no explanations. That's it.
Now, by the way, Brian, that's a good question.
How do you attempt to build positive relationships with those who believe that all cops are bastards or bad? This is an actual movement in Oregon. We are very, very, very aware of this group.
I was surprised. I've never heard of it before.
Really?
No. That was the
between
first
Antifa and ACAB, like they have a lot of graffiti, on the buildings down here. During the protest, we were able to have civil conversations because there's a difference between a protest and a riot. Protests are fine. Peaceful protests, we will block off the streets. We will make sure you are safe and let you protest throughout the streets of Atlanta. That's what Atlanta's known for, is the civil rights movement. My team, our team, the CDU unit, we don't come out for protests, for peaceful protests. We come out when they become violent, when the riots start to happen. That's when we come out. We respond to those things when there's destruction of property, fires, or people who are being threatened or being injured. That's when we come out. So we made several attempts to talk to representatives from different organizations. Watson and I actually stood together at one point in front of the CNN Center and offered, said, hey, if you guys want to work together, we want to build a better relationship. We want to help the community move forward. They had not so nice words for us. You know, some people are okay with just how things are. Some people just want to cause trouble and look for excuses to cause violence or destruction of property. Those aren't people that we can build positive relationships with because they're not open to it. But the ones who wanted to have a conversation, we took off our helmets and said, do you want to have a conversation? Do you really want to know why we are out here and why we're police officers and Black and police officers? And we were able to have those conversations with those people. But unfortunately, members of this organization, they don't really want to talk to us.
And I just want to add to Sergeant Murphy, to her statement. A lot of time, those conversations are not a dialogue; they're more so of a monologue, and we don't get the opportunity to speak at all. These organizations, they don't like to hear anything from us. So, but we try to make several attempts to build that bridge. If that makes sense.
So I'm checking the chat. Nothing else. Go ahead, Watson.
Okay. How would you pronounce question number 4 now? Because I don't want to. How would you pronounce her name? Because I want to be sure.
Her name.
Her name. Did you say that?
For the teacher to say.
Right.
But just go ahead with the question.
Okay. How has BLM Black Lives Matter movement affected your relationship with your family and close friends? This is a really good question because within my own family, of course, they have their own opinions about what police look like. What do they look like on the news and how they respond to different behaviors around the United States. With my friends.
You got some background noise, Watson. I
do. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I think I don't know, it's when you move, like the air hits your mic.
Oh, that paper. Okay.
Probably the paper. Yeah.
I apologize. Okay. But we have this in my family, we have different actually peaceful conversations about some things that have gone on around the United States about police officers. Along with my friends are very mature. We don't have heated discussions. But it definitely affected it in a positive way because they can now talk to me. They want to know they have questions, and my family and friends want to have questions, and they know that they can come to me because I'm closest to them to give them the insight as to truly what may have gone down in any scenario. So I think it went from a positive aspect, and they get to know me a little better actually.
So my close friends and family, of course, they're even my father. Now I think that's as close as I can get. My dad and I am just like him. I act just like him. I look just like him. I am his mini-me. But at one point in time, during the protests and the riots, we had a disagreement. We honestly did. We didn't see eye to eye because at that point in time, he had strong feelings about an incident that happened here in Atlanta. And he said to me, if you feel like you have to take a life, I don't want you to be a police officer anymore. And with that being said to me, just as Watson and I had just finished working 15 hours, getting yelled at, getting fireworks thrown at us, eggs and everything else, that was my father that said that statement to me. And although it hurt, I understood. You know, you have to understand that a lot of times when people, and especially people close to you, are upset about what's happening, they're coming from a personal place. Like they don't imagine me being that officer, you know, me being that officer in that split-second decision, because they want me to come home, you know, they want me to make it home. But it's sometimes you have to mute social media. Honestly, guys, I have classmates, sorority sisters, college friends. Just sometimes you just got to mute them because it was at one point so negative, like everything was so negative. And I know what type of officer I am and why I became an officer. And I know Watson and I know my white allies and my white officers, They they don't want to go out and hurt someone just because they're Black. And it started to mentally, you have to decompress. And that's one of those things that you have to do. So my relationship with my father is fine. But you definitely have to have those conversations like Watson had said, to make sure there's an understanding. Like I had to sit my dad down after, because for a while I wasn't talking to him. I had to wait till after the protest because I had to focus. But he called me. He said, "I love you." I said, "I love you too." And that was it. But after that, we actually had a face-to-face conversation. I had to explain to him that some of the things, that information that he was getting was not true. He didn't know everything that happened in that incident in that parking lot, but he was only going off of what he knew. So that's the thing I have to remember. Like a lot of times when people project their anger towards us, they really don't know. They don't know and they don't understand. All right.
Hey, CJ.
I see the question. Yes, ma'am.
Just to make it easier on you guys, because I didn't understand the platform, I spoke with the professor Erickson, and I told him that I'll just ask you guys the questions, so you're not having to go down the the page. Is that?
I said we were doing a great job, but that's fine. Go ahead.
All right. So the next question is.
And there's one in the group too.
Okay, you can take that one. If one pops up in the group, then go ahead and take that.
Okay, let me get it real quick. At a young age, African-American children get two talks. One is the birds and the bees, and the other is how to talk to police officers so they don't get hurt or killed. How do you feel about, wait, somebody else asked the question. Okay, how do you feel about the African-American community being scared of the police officers who are supposed to protect us? Do you think this is fair? No, I don't think it's fair. I don't think that we should fear or have to fear someone who is supposed to talk and to protect us. And that same talk that you're talking about, Watson and myself, we got that talk too. You know, if an officer pulls you over, put your hands on the wheel, let your windows down, don't move, don't make any sudden moves. Yes, sir, no, sir. Make sure you don't, make any gestures or anything to make the officer nervous. Why should an officer be nervous of me just because of the color of my skin? Like, what about me makes you so nervous? And Watson to tell you, we get pulled over all the time because look at us, guys. Out of these uniforms, we look like everybody. I have locks down my back. So they think, they don't know me. They don't know I'm a sergeant with APD. They probably thinking that I got weed in the car, just stereotype things that society has placed on the Black community. I'm saying we, as everybody, myself and Watson included, and our other officers, all who wanted to be on this call, but we became officers to change that. We don't want you to fear us. We don't want you to be scared of us. Honestly, we want to make it home just like everybody else. We don't wake up wanting to lock anybody up. I think Watson too, we prefer not to do that paperwork. We prefer to go around, play basketball with the kids, talk to people. Hey, sir, how's it? Check on the gas station, check on the good. Great shift. Great shift for us is everybody goes home, nobody goes to jail. Great. What'd you say, Watson?
That's a good question. What I see on a daily basis is sometimes parents do have some past experiences in their own, and they pass them down to their children. And that is another factor of how they're fearful of us. But like Sergeant Murphy said, I prefer not to do any of that. I want to get you to a better place in your life. And for example, for a gentleman or a young lady that don't have the license, hey, let's work on, let's give you a goal of 2 months. Come back to me in 2 months and let's see if you have those license. So I like an easy shift.
Definitely agree with that. That's the first thing we're taught, is not everybody deserves to go to jail. Like a mother shoplifting food from the store. Why am I going to lock her up when she's trying to feed her kids? Like, that makes no sense. A college student with a little weed in the car, get your butt to the door. What are you doing? Right. I should call your mama. Like, those are the type of officers that we are. Yeah, we have done that.
I have. Yeah.
But I mean, ultimately, it's not fair, but we have to understand the history of policing. you know, where it came from, where it started, catching slaves and everything. Just like the history of doctors, how they used to experiment on Black people, how they used to do all these terrible things. But now doctors are loved. Doctors are great, you know, even though, you know, there's still a high number of Black women dying during pregnancy. But doctors are great. But police officers, one of us do wrong, we are all terrible. That's just it. We are the only profession where one of us, does something terrible, then we all pay for it. It's not an individual effort. And we understand that there are some bad officers, because officers are human. They're bad people. They're evil people. And unfortunately, there's no test that we can give someone to tell us their deepest, darkest secrets and whether or not they're racist. That has to come out. So I guess, Rhonda, we're ready.
Thank you, Sarah, by the way. I like Sarah's comment. I appreciate it, Sarah.
Yeah, that was a great question. The next question is from Jasmine, and she asked, have you ever realized your own biases towards a group of people? And if so, how did you deal with that realization?
Man.
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yes. I am. Okay. You guys are not here. Okay. You have Atlanta. Atlanta's Black. Atlanta is the Black Hollywood. Atlanta is this Black Mecca of people. I was not a good kid. I was terrible. I was running around with gangs. I was terrible. And I ended up moving from a predominantly Black area to an all white area. I'm talking like white, like Rockdale County before it was Conyers. So I graduated from Rockdale County High School. And that's where it was like big pickup trucks and camouflage hats with the hooks in it, and they go mud bogging and cow tipping. I didn't know what any of that stuff was. You know, I'm from the city. We play basketball, and I know what football is. They talk about lacrosse and volleyball. I'm like, what is this? It's a whole different world. And I had a bias towards white people because growing up from the South and my parents being from the South and my grandparents, growing up with my grandparents and hearing the stories, like my grandmother showed us the tree that my uncle was hung from. She used to pick cotton, you know. My mom was like one of the first people in her county to work at the courthouse as a Black woman. She went to a segregated high school. You know, that's what's instilled in me. Civil rights movement, the Black Panthers. So I get to this white school. I'm like, oh no, no, I'm not hanging out with you. No, we don't go camping. No, what is cow tipping? No, I'm not doing any of that. So I had to recognize my bias towards white people and understand that not all white people were racist.
I have to agree with you on that because when I was younger, also being from Atlanta, being from the west side of Atlanta, there's very few white people on that side of town, and it was like, well, what are you doing in our neighborhood? And I developed that same mindset over time. As I got older, I started to recognize, wow, I actually have some white friends. I didn't know. And then as I became a police officer, I began my friendship has expanded now. And now I'm starting to understand, like, no, they are okay. I don't have no issue with them. You know what I'm saying? So that was one of my biases I had no idea about. It was just put into us. You know, over time, it's things that is just generation after generation after generation. For example, like you mentioned, your grandmother. They've told us stories, you know, and we stuck with those. But all white people aren't bad. So that was one of my biases, actually. Also.
All right. Any questions out there pending, CJ, that you can see?
Oh, not yet.
Okay. So Kellis asks, does it ever get to you when all people see is your badge and that you're not just like them? What steps do you take to relate to those people?
Ooh.
Oh man, that.
These kids asking some real questions, right?
Which is good. It makes me angry. It makes me so bad. Look, he gotta breathe before he can speak. So I'm gonna talk. So count to 5, Watson. I'm gonna go. Okay. So yes. It's because my uniform, they question our Blackness because we are police officers. You question how Black I am and how loyal I am to my community because of my career. Like that hurts to no other level. And the fact that we have to explain to people that this badge does not take away who I am. You know, this was a choice. Like Watson and I could be doing other things. My degree is not even in criminal justice at all. I'm a marketing and business major. I could be doing a lot of other things, but I chose to be a police officer because I chose to help my community. And then when people look at me and my own community judges me, it I I don't know how to make you understand how that feels. When you know in your heart your intentions and you know what you want to do, and every time you turn on the TV, every time you get on Facebook, every time you get on Instagram, every time you do anything, it's police brutality, bad cops, defund the police, do this, this. Nobody's talking about us. Like, what about us? What about the good cops? You know, what about Watson? Watson was going around giving ties to the little kids in the community. Nobody knows. The CNN report that I do a Christmas jobs for the kids in the shelter every year. Nobody knows that. We tutor kids. We do all these things. And then what do we do to relate to these individuals? We do things like this. Like we take time out or time off. Both of us do it. We volunteer to speak. Ms. Frost does a really good job getting us out there so we could talk and we can have a voice. Luckily, our chief backs us on this, to letting us talk to the people, to letting us see who we are. We're not just cops. Like this, I'm Murphy. That's Watson. Let me tell you about me. Let me tell you what I like to do. Let me tell you what I like to listen to. Let me tell you I got a dog. You know, I'm just like you guys. You know, I love the Falcons even though they piss me off all the time. Like I like sports. Like, let's talk about who I am. Like, we have more in common than people know.
I agree with Sergeant Murphy on that one. My favorite phrase of that's associated with this is guilty by association. Because I have on this uniform, if someone did something wrong in Kansas, as an example, then I'm also guilty for what the officer did. So what I like to do to bring that back, that relation, I like to put the community in my own shoes. For example, so I said, okay, well, we're all black, right? What if because somebody shot somebody down the street and they were black and they accused you and said, man, if that person came into the neighborhood like, oh, I clinched that person, like, oh, wow, this black man shot somebody down the street. What if you were guilty by association? How would you feel? We are all different people. No one talks about the great things that we do. No one talked about when I found a 9-year-old kid, or when the lady needed a gas, when she ran out of gas in her truck, I went inside the gas station, bought her a gas can, and told her to get her own gas. No one's talking about that. You know what I'm saying? But these things, and just so you all know, kids, the good things don't make the news like this. The reason why is because it doesn't hold any value as far as a crowd, because everyone's so against it, you know? So one of my ways is how to relate is put them in my shoes, and then I can make them think just a little bit about how I feel, but I don't like to be guilty by association.
Very good. Okay, so Shelby/Maya asked, it looks like I skipped one, but it says there have been calls for defunding the police. What are your thoughts about that? What does that look like to you?
So for us, I think defunding the police is not a great term, because people automatically think about the money that we get. And honestly, guys, 80% of the money we get goes towards our salary. 80%. The equipment and things that you see that a lot of people have issues with those are more grants. Okay. So defunding our department would lessen the training and the amount of officers and what we get paid, which is not a lot. And a lot of us work really, really hard and a lot of extra jobs to make ends meet and make sure we are taking care of our families and we're able to do the things that we want to do. So if it means we don't have to go to non-violent calls and we can spend more time on more violent calls, I'm good with that. I don't have a problem with that. But a lot of people don't understand, like, for instance, the mental crisis. When people call 911 because their loved one is having a psychotic break off the medicine, the ambulance, the paramedics won't come in until the police come in and make the scene secure. So even if you get mental health specialists to come to those calls, we still have to show up because they're not going to go if they fear they're going to be harmed. So I think defunding the police, this is my personal view, is not the right way to go. Can we work on some things? Can we work on some reforms? Can we rewrite some things? Yes, but we don't need to take away and defund the areas who need the police the most. That's who you're gonna hurt. It's these elderly people and these young people who need police in their areas, and that's not what we want to do.
I have Sergeant Murphy said it all. I actually don't have a comment actually on about defunding the police because I feel the exact same way that Sergeant Murphy feel. Yeah, I appreciate that. That was a really good question, Shelby and Maya.
Okay, so the next question is from Natanya.
Hey, Rhonda, hold on 1 second. So we got one from Cody.
Okay.
And Cody says, being in the heart of the Black community and very knowledgeable about the civil rights movement, how is the current Black Lives Matter movement different from the Black Panthers and other protests in Atlanta? The current Black Lives Matter movement in Atlanta, I can't speak for the nation, it has a lot of bickering among the leaders. They just cannot get on the same page. There's different groups that say they are, Black Lives Matter chapter of Atlanta, and they want to do this, they want to do that. Just like when we were out in the protest, we would try to speak with who was in charge to get a conversation going, see what they wanted, to see how we could work together. But as we tried to talk to that one person, another person would come out the crowd and say that they were the leader, and that's not what they want. And then it was just a lot. And I think what I liked about the Panthers is, the programs they would have put together about the food, about homework, about the schools, and how they took care of the neighborhoods. Like when we have shootings or have drive-bys or have missing kids, especially little Black kids, help us. Like, let's work together. Let's use your platform so we can, if we create a better community where we don't need the police as much, then we can start to make some movements. So I think that's the big difference. If they would be a little more organized and have a plan of action together, they would work better with us. And a lot of times they really don't know what it is that we do, because a lot of the things that they say they want on their website, if you guys go to the website, I know you did some research, we already do. The training that they want, the de-escalation, the bias, and all these things that they want us to do. We wear body cameras, we have tasers, we do double the amount of training hours that anybody else does in the state of Georgia. We have one of the best trainings in the country, but they don't know that. So a lot of their demands and a lot of the things they say they want for the police to do, they don't know that we're already doing it.
CJ, talk about the way, you teach implicit and explicit bias. Talk about that just for a little bit, what that means.
Okay. So as I was saying, the state of Georgia requires about 408 hours of training. Okay. APD does over 800 hours of training. So our recruits are here for up to 35 weeks in training. During that time, one of the things that they do is they take my class, which is fair and impartial policing. Before they take the class, they actually take a tour of the Civil Rights Museum here in Atlanta. We want them to see and understand the history of policing, different cultures, and the civil rights movement here. There's actually a section in the museum where you can sit at the counter. They put the headphones on, you put your hands on the table, and as the sit-ins back during the 1950s, 1960s, they used to throw stuff and yell and scream in your ear or threaten you. That's what's going on in those headphones. And there's been times when recruits are like crying. They have, the Freedom Riders bus. Like you get to understand everything that was fought for. They have a section where they talk about the LGBT community and different things. So they get to experience that. And then after they go to lunch, I come to the Civil Rights Museum and I actually teach them fair and impartial policing. We talk about explicit and implicit biases. I use the actual people in the class, the recruits in the class, to talk about different things. We're going to talk about sex. We're going to talk about sexuality, religion. We're going to talk about all those things. We're going to talk about how if you come and answer a call into a temple or a home, if you notice there are no shoes, everybody's shoes are at the door. Don't walk in there with your boots on. Don't disrespect their home or their temple or their place of worship. If you ask them to come outside, if you have an officer, someone who is Muslim and they have to pray at a certain time of the day, you tell your brother and sister in blue, I got your back. Make sure they're able to pray safely. If you are speaking to one and they have a covering on and it's a woman and you're answering her questions and she's not responding to you and she's looking at the man, notice the culture differences. So we want our officers to be aware and sensitive to those things, because Atlanta is very, very diverse. So that class is to talk about things, and we it's an open discussion, because I want the recruits to be able to know the people they work with too. So I asked, if you don't mind, what are the religions in the room? Do we have anybody who's atheist, Catholic, Jehovah's Witness, Muslim? We talk about the Buddhists, everything. But okay, if you don't understand what that is, let's ask. Ask your classmate. Ask that recruit, what does that mean? And it's one of the, I'm very proud of that class. I've been doing it for years. And I think it's so important. I'm actually teaching it next week and I can't wait, because it kind of opens everybody's eyes up, because you can come from Iowa and apply to be an Atlanta police officer. And I don't know what your makeup is up there. Your teacher told me it's a lot of corn, but if you're not used to being around a lot of diverse communities and you come down here and you want to be a police officer, you need to be aware of what you're walking into. And it's not that you're racist. You just have no experience. You have no knowledge of it. And so that's why I teach that class.
Great stuff there. So Danae asked, why are predominantly African-American communities policed heavier than predominantly white communities? Woof.
Ooh.
Now, that is Danae. Is it Danae?
Well, that's what it looks like. Help me
is she on here?
That's a good
maybe
question.
Guess no. Is she on?
Yeah, he's on.
Okay, so maybe you can answer this for me. When he's saying police heavier, is he getting this from certain statistics, or is this?
No, it's just from, like, I guess it's known. I guess, or like people just think that, I guess, it's overly policed.
Overly policed. Okay. I just want to make sure I understand your question.
Well, to clarify, at least I've done a couple of like ride-alongs, Iowa City, Johnson County, which is just north of here. And when I was on ride-alongs, the police presence was a lot heavier in African American communities than the white communities. We spent a lot of time in that area driving and making, I guess, as the officers told me, our presence known, compared to like a white neighborhood, a predominantly white neighborhood.
So speaking for us specifically, I can tell you as a sergeant, we are putting the resources where the crime is high. That's the response. Now, that could be a couple of things. Also, African American communities also ask for the police officers more. They like to be seen. We get a lot of calls and requests for why I haven't seen an officer in my neighborhood type calls. So if we do our crime analysis unit does statistics for us every week. And there's a certain area with higher crime, we're going to send our discretionary units to those areas. Now, it's unfortunate that sometimes the African American community does have more crime in the area than some white areas. But that's the best way I can answer that. If crime goes down, police presence will go down, if that makes sense. But we also have to respond to city councilors, faith leaders, the schools. People request us, but don't often like to let the public know that they request us. So we'll go to a community meeting and they'll say, well, you know, I barely see a police officer in my area. You know, what are you guys doing? Where are you guys? Okay, ma'am. Next week, you got 5 officers rolling that same little corridor. Then you have somebody like, why are you all over here with just the Black people? And I can't say, hey, Miss So-and-so on the corner asks us to be out here because she's scared that you're going to break into her house. I can't say that. So it's kind of a catch-22 on that one.
I want to add to it.
Yeah, go ahead. Because you on the street right now.
So I can explain I'm a patrol officer, which means that when someone calls 911, I show up. I do work in a predominantly heavy Black zone. Let's not forget that the City of Atlanta Police Department is majority Black. So of course it was seen as if that's the case. However, when we have a lot of violent crimes, and my zone is a lot of violent, I work in a violent zone. With my zone being so violent, majority of the suspect and the victim are going to be Black because of the zone. The victim and the suspect will be Black. Considering that, it's my job that since that happened in my area that I patrol, it's my job to, 1, make sure that that don't happen again. 2, I want to build a heavy presence because it's important that, so since someone got shot here, now we need to bring all that, like Sergeant Murphy said, all our resources to this area. Not all of them, but let's use what we have in that area or to gain information about who got shot, if that makes any sense. But of course, I understand. It definitely seems as if we are patrolling predominantly Black neighborhoods, but again, our department is Black. So we don't have many. We do have white officers, of course, but we don't have many. But if you can take Buckhead, for example, there are a lot of white officers in Buckhead. So you want to add to that?
Yeah, I want to say also that population has a lot to do with it too. So, and a lot of the African American areas is a higher congestion, a higher population. So therefore, if it's 1 officer to every 100 citizens, I'm gonna send more officers to that area because I want to make sure Watson makes it home. So if something happens, I want to be able to get the officers to the location of the incident to get everybody safely to where they need to be. So if you get a small town and it's mostly white and they got 2 sheriffs, that's why. Everybody knows everybody. It's quiet. You get to a major city and you have projects, apartment homes, trailer parks, all this stuff in a congested area. You have to have more police in that area for safety reasons too. It's not that we just want to run around and arrest all the Black people. It's the fact that if something happens, if you're in that apartment complex and someone starts shooting, you're going to want more than one police officer responding to help make sure you and your mom are okay.
Brady asks, why do you think that many Black Lives Matter protests turn violent? And in parentheses, they put property damage, etc. In your opinion, are these actions justified?
Here's why I think. Everyone, like we spoke prior, everyone is not on the same page. They're not. So if maybe back in the day, Martin Luther King, they met together before going out. Here, everyone's a lot angry, emotional. They don't know what to do. And when you're angry or emotional, you think irrationally. This happened because we're not getting together and saying, hey, this is our mission. This is what we want to accomplish tonight, whether it's tonight or for 45 days. This is what we want to accomplish. So my answer to that is we have to be on the same page. And in my opinion, are the actions justified? Completely not. Absolutely not. That is not justified at all. Property damage is completely not justified.
My response to that is there's a difference between a protest and a riot. Again, I'll say that. We have peaceful protests all the time. So I don't want you guys to think that the Black Lives Matter protests are violent. Sometimes after those protests are over, Antifa and other groups come out. They use the cover of night to cause destruction. That's their ultimate goal, to cause destruction, to rebel against the government. So destruction of poverty, I agree with Watson, because it's a lot of people that work really hard out here, guys. It's a lot of family-owned businesses. It's like the only corner store, the only restaurant in the hood that you're burning down, and then you leave. A lot of these protesters don't live in the city. Let's be clear. They come from the suburbs, come burn down and trash these communities where these people, especially Black people, have to live and survive. And then they go back to their suburbs where they still got their gas stations and Wendy's and everything else. But that young lady who worked so hard to get her business license, to start her own clothing boutique down here, whose whole store was burned down, she didn't do anything. She didn't deserve that. It's not justified. And I think that's why we talk so passionately about it, because we know these are business owners. They are the ones that give the kids the job. They are the ones that are sponsor the football teams, the youth football teams. Or, if you need a prom dress, she'll give it to you. But now she's out of business. And I just can't justify that at all.
So the next question is from Brady again. He or she asks, have you ever felt that you are a target of violence just because you wear a badge?
All the time.
All the time.
All the time. Watson and I have been hit with fireworks, paint. They point the lasers in our eyes, rocks. They had bottles of feces they threw at us, glass bottles, just because they didn't know our names, just because of the uniform we had on. We had an officer whose house was firebombed. We had an officer who suffered a concussion. An officer whose patrol car was surrounded. They hit her vehicle with a barricade that they picked up. I mean, it's to the point where my personal vehicle is so dark because I don't want you to be able to see me in it. Like that's the fear. We are taught to not take the same way home. We are taught to change out of our uniform. Don't even stop at the store. Don't even stop for gas. You have a hoodie in your car or a jersey and you put it on, then you go home. So it's like we live in fear as Black people. We live in fear as officers too. And we live in fear as members of the LGBT community. So it's like it was multiple targets that we feel all the time. And policing's the only one that we chose, and we're trying to help people.
Oh, you can go ahead, Ms. Frost. Oh, Ms. Sergeant Murphy said it all.
All right.
You did. I mean, you did. I gotta.
She's good at that.
But that's also that's a really good question.
So the next question is,
if you don't mind, can I ask? And concerning that last question, do you find that the public maybe are more aggressive towards you being African American in a uniform compared to maybe violence against a white person in a police uniform?
Actually, no. That's a good question. The only thing they don't see that I'm Black. They don't see that. They don't care that I'm Black. What they see is a uniform that either did multiple things. One, arrested them. Two, interrupted their activity, right? Or said something smart to them they didn't like. It's not about my skin color. It's about this uniform, and this uniform did something to them, caused some type of trauma to them. So it's not our skin color at all. Now, the Black officers do get the most heat in Atlanta. We get the most heat at all because they ask us, hey, take that. And Sergeant Murphy's were beside, her and I were beside each other. And they say, hey, take that uniform off. And this is what I told them. I said, if I take this uniform off, what you're saying is you want me and other Black officers to leave, right? But what you're doing is now you're saying, hey, and now I want all the white officers to patrol the neighborhood. And when I call 911, show up. And that's who they have an issue with. But we are representing our own people. We're showing up and saying, hey, we're Black. We know what's going on. Hey, come talk to me. You know, we can recognize and I can relate. Sergeant Murphy and I can relate to our people because we understand. I grew up Black. I grew up in Atlanta. I can understand. But if I were to take this uniform off, you're asking me to come on that side, and there will be no more people that can relate to you.
Piggybacking off the Watson, like on that line, on that front line, we are coons, traitors. You sell your soul for $30,000 a year. My car costs more than what you make. New age slave catcher. We are the lowest of the lowest of our people because they look at us as traitors. And ultimately, like he said, if it wasn't for us, a lot more of us would be locked up. I mean, if we want to be honest, like I know that we are a passionate group of people. I know that we talk with our hands. I know you might yell and scream, but you're not going to hit me. You're not violent because I grew up in that environment. I am you. This uniform, as Watson said, does not change who I am, but it's hard for the public to see that because they just look at it just all together. Like once you swear in, something snaps and you become this robot and you no longer understand your people, and that's not what happens.
And I just want to add just one thing to that. And this just happened recently last week. I was sitting at a gas station, and the lady, my patrol car was there, and she got out the car, and her daughter got out. They went to go get some pizza, and the husband said something, you know, the police right there, and she said, "Well, I don't like them." And I said, "Hey, you might come here for a moment?" And I said, "Hey, have you ever met me before?" She said, "No." I said, "Have I ever did anything to you?" She said, "No, but I just don't like y'all." I said, "You know what? I think we should recognize the officers that did something wrong to you." And she thought about it and she said, "You know what? I apologize because you actually right. Officer Watson, you did nothing to me. And I just said I don't like you without even knowing you." So that's one of my bridges that I do take the opportunity when I hear things like that. I take that opportunity right there to bridge the gap. And most of the times I am successful.
That's huge because one of the things we do in our community, the Black community, is we say, you see that officer, if you don't be good, they're going to lock you up. To little kids, 7, 6, 3-year-olds. If you don't stop crying and tell that officer come get you, we instill that fear at a very young age, and it does not change. Like we are automatically the bad guys. Automatically. Like if you don't be good, you're gonna go to jail. Don't we say that all the time. We say, "Ma'am, sir, please don't say that." Because if something's wrong, they're lost, if somebody's hurt them or touched them, you want them to be able to come talk to us. And by doing that, you're causing this fear in them that they're never gonna grow out of.
Well said. So the next question is from Jack, and Jack asks, what is your opinion concerning the All Lives Matter movement in response to the Black Lives Matter movement? Don't all lives matter equally?
So when I started hearing that all lives matter, it bothered me because Black Lives Matter does not say that nobody else matters. It's not. Black Lives Matter is just for people to understand, the society to understand that my life is just as important as anybody else, as your life, as a white male, white female. Just because we're saying Black Lives Matters, it's because we want you to understand that they do. All right, we're not just, and I say we because I'm an officer, but I'm Black. We are just as valuable and just as important as anybody else in this world. So when the All Lives Matter response came out, it kind of defeated the purpose. Black Lives Matter is not saying that nobody else matter. There's not. They're saying that Black lives do matter. Like they do have substance. Like when you think about Trayvon Martin and all these names that I just don't want to go down the list because it makes me upset. Because a lot of people should still be here. But in order to as a Black person, and this is my personal feelings, in order for Black lives to matter, they have to matter to us as Black people. So the first thing we got to do and start bridging the gap and working with some fellow Black officers to show that our lives are just as important, and that we want to make sure that everybody understands that life is precious, period. We can't be out here killing each other. We cannot be out here not respecting life at all. And that's important. And how do I respond to the Blue Lives Matter mockery that's in the chat? So Blue Lives Matter is just in response to Black Lives Matter, because I never heard any of these before Black Lives Matter. And it's the same thing. Watson and I don't walk around saying Blue Lives Matter. We don't walk around saying all lives matter, because we know what the meaning of the Black Lives Matter movement is. It's not that nobody else matters. Yes, police lives do matter. I don't want to lose anybody I work with. I hate to see a police officer injured. I hate to see a police officer killed. But I can say, working as a homicide detective, dealing with death every day, people don't respect the value of life. And that is a problem for anybody, anywhere. However, Black Lives Matter is not saying that nobody else matters. And people got offended because they didn't feel as important. So they came up with these other phrases. That's it. That's raw and that's real. That's it. Go on, bro.
I mean, I there's no more to say. I mean, when you Black Lives Matter was the first the matter, correct? And then everything, like Sergeant Murphy said, followed through with it. No one was talking about it. Me, I believe, I don't want to see nobody hurt. I don't want to see nobody die. No one. I've seen enough dead bodies and people getting shot. We have to stop within our own community and have conversations and saying, hey, how can we solve conflict much more than what we're doing today? And that's my response to that.
We got a question in the chat from Cody. So you talked about bridging the gap between officers and Black citizens. Do you think there would need to be a culture change within the Black community? Absolutely, yes, Cody. Absolutely. Like, change will not happen if you just focus on one side. Because, okay, we can reform all the officers. I can train them all day, say, hey, treat everybody equally. This is what we're going to follow. This is our new policy, okay? We're not going to do such and such anymore. This is it. However, we go into the community and the officers are still being treated or threatened or doing the same things that were done before. We're not going to make any progress. We're not going to make any progress at all. We have to work together. The protests, I understand the reason. I get it, but nothing is changing. We have to try something different. Like, we have to try something different. Like, this has been going on for far too long. Watson and I are tired of it. And in order to make that change, you have to be the change. So as Watson and I are changing the department from in and policing from within, the community, we need allies outside to change. And we need you guys to come up. You guys are what, 9th, 10th grade? Soon you're going to be in college. We need your help. Like, remember this conversation you had with us. So when you get out here and you start to vote or you start to be active in your community, lawyers, doctors, whatever you decide to do, one day I may be a judge one day. I don't know. Remember this conversation. Like, we have to have allies and work together. This country is based on separation right now. And in order for us to move forward, we have to be united. And that's in everything.
I do agree. I am the change I want to see. That's why I became a police officer, because I've seen some issues in Atlanta, in our own community, that I knew that I can bring my own little spice to it with a little humor and saying, how can I help someone understand or seek other people's perspectives? You know, how can I do that? And I do that on a daily basis. So I community police majority of my 8-hour shift, and I really enjoy it. So we have to start within our own community and have that very uncomfortable conversation to be able to get to comfort.
All right, Ms. Runner, we're good.
So, Mr. Erickson, you had a couple of questions on the list. Do you want to just say them yourself since they're yours?
Yeah. I was just wondering, after I think it was just a few months ago, I was just watching the news, and it was taking, the riots were taking place in Atlanta. And, do you think that local or national African-American rap artists like Michael Render or, Killer Mike or T.I., are they positive role models for the Atlanta community, or do they do more harm than good?
So T.I. doesn't even live in Atlanta.
At all.
Okay.
I mean,
That's so weird where he lives in Henry County.
Well, I'm not a big fan of T.I., but I really like Killer Mike. He is one of my favorites.
I do like Killer Mike, and I agree with his statements about activism, how you have to organize first. They need a plan first. You have to have a plan. And he is one of the ones to say, we need the police. We need good police officers, which I agree with. But honestly, I feel like if you have that platform, let's use it. Let's use it more. T.I. is not somebody that we would call for assistance. He's out in Henry County chilling in his mansion, but if you have that platform, use it for positivity and a better light. Don't just come out when the cameras are out. Come out right now. We've had a lot of homicides this year. A lot. Where are they? But a protest, bullhorn, CNN, here we go. So if you're gonna do it, come out here. Come out here in the trenches with us at all times. And that's what I like. Like I'm all for it. If you want to come out here and help us, come on. Like that's just how we feel. Like if we want people who are gonna help us, not just when the cameras are on.
And just to add to that, Mr. Erickson, there was a little girl that got shot at the Wendy's. And for the first time in my 4 years on, they did a rally, not a march, but it was a standalone rally in a park. T.I. was not there. No one was there to say, hey, this little girl got shot in the same place where there was an officer involved shooting. None of these big celebrities were there when this little girl got shot by the citizens that were in the area that took over the area. No one was there. I kid you not, I could count how many people was there for that visual for that little girl. I would say 50. I can also count how many people were at the protest/riot, hundreds and thousands, way over. And this little girl did not get that same respect.
Yeah, that's part of the issue. Like when people who say all lives matter, that's what their biggest point. Like, how do Black lives matter if they don't matter to Black people? Like we get that all the time, and that's their main argument they like to stand on. And Black on Black crime. Crime is crime. Let's be honest. Crime happens in the area where crime happens. If a whole bunch of Black people live together, it's going to be Black on Black. If a whole bunch of white people live together, it's going to be white on white. So let's not talk about that unless we're willing to have a real uncomfortable conversation. So, got a question. Do you feel that social media makes people's views on things about Black Lives Matter or other police-related things worse / more divided instead of bringing each other together? This is from Jackson Riley. Yes, Jackson. Yes. Social media. You know how many Facebook police I have gotten arguments with? Like, they don't know the laws. They don't know the facts. And it's just everybody's opinion. Social media is good because it helps us get information out. If we're looking for a suspect, a missing kid, like it's good for that. However, it is terrible with facts because people cut videos. First, they don't even have the whole video. Then they cut like 12 seconds and like, oh, this is what happened. The police did something terrible. Nothing prior to what caused the whole incident. Nothing after the incident. So yes, and it brings out the ugly side of people behind that keyboard. I call them keyboard warriors. They're real courageous behind the keyboard, but they would never, ever, ever have enough strength to put this uniform on. You got anything you want to add, Watson?
No, I'm good.
All right, Ms. Rhonda.
I've got one more for you. So do you find that police, I was having trouble wording this. Do you find that police officers are like second guessing themselves when it comes to a situation that is potentially violent, where you may, maybe your first instinct was to, I guess, use force, but you second guess, and are they concerned with that hesitation now where it may end up biting them and biting them and doing harm to them just because, maybe because of the social media and the cameras are on and the way society is. And pardon my language, it just seems like it's one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't, where if you use appropriate force, it could come back on you. But if you had that hesitation, it could really, hurt you.
Mhm.
And that was kind of my question. Is there hesitation?
Yes, because at this point we're thinking, you know, first I already risked my life. Now I risk my freedom too. Because even if I do something in my job, even if I do something that was legal, somebody may not think it is right. So, officers are definitely, we've lost some officers, some really good officers, like myself and Watson, who really want to change the community. And ultimately, if your children and your family is asking you and crying because they're scared, they want you to change your career. I mean, that comes first. If I had a kid and they cried and said they didn't want me to be a police officer anymore, I would really have to consider stepping down because, family is more important than any career. But officers are definitely, we have to, especially here at the academy, teach them the laws. And unfortunately, because of circumstances lately, sometimes those laws aren't considered when decisions are made. And it's a bad state that we're in, but we're definitely not giving up. We're not standing down. If you call 911, we're coming. But there's definitely second thoughts and second guesses and questionings. And the biggest fear is hesitation. Hesitation can cost you your life and on the street. So
Yes, I appreciate that, Mr. Eric. That hesitation, it's a scary situation. It's very extremely scary because it's like, if it is it or is it not? It's like that jump rope. Is it not? Again, I want myself and the rest of my fellow officers to go home. And if we can definitely de-escalate a situation, we are definitely down to de-escalate a situation before using force, deadly force, if anything, or any type of force at all. But hesitation definitely will cause harm. And then, well, let's say you did get hurt. Now, you're like, wow, I should have did what I should have did. Now it's replaying over and over and over and over in your head. And that's when the shoulda, coulda, wouldas approach it. That's when the shoulda, coulda, wouldas is now saying, well, I should have done something sooner, but it was a kid, or he was naked, or whatever it may be. So that was a good question.
Okay, CJ, this is a good one for you, obviously. What type of physical restraint tactics are taught in the academy?
Oh, wow. We have a lot of different defensive tactics, moves that we teach at the academy. I know the biggest thing people have questions about the chokeholds. That's huge. APD does not teach chokeholds. That's like the top when we do these conversations, the top physical restraint that people ask about. Our recruits are trained in boxing, ground fighting. We do different holds, aspartame, OC spray. We do have tasers. We teach our officers, we teach our recruits to restrain with reasonable force, meaning if I'm like 5'4", 160, okay? If I get into it with Mr. Erickson, who I believe is taller than me, there's a certain amount of force that I could use to restrain him. And I can articulate why that, because he was stronger than me. I wasn't able to control him by, trying to use an arm bar or physically restrain him with my hands. I had to tase him. I can articulate that. Now, if it's somebody like my brother who's Big Murph, Sergeant Murph, Zoe is about 6'5", 6'6", about 280. Now, if he sat there and did something like that, they're like, wait, no. because you have to compare the situation and the circumstances. Like if there are multiple officers who are trying to get someone under control, let's say if you're under the influence, the taser will not affect you like that. So we could fire off the taser, and you're just going. We have had guys that take the taser, just rip it off, and just keep running towards you because they're under the influence of some type of narcotic. Now, if it's me, Watson, let's say that Mr. Erickson is one of our officers, all three of us are on this guy. We can't get him down. We're tasing him, and then we might have to get on him, holding his limbs. You know, we might have to call for backup because that's just a situation that we're unable to control. But I think most of the time, in my mind, when people say physical restraint, that's the top thing that people want to know is about the chokeholds, and we don't teach chokeholds at all.
Not at all.
Yeah. When we shoot the taser, you avoid the head and the groin area. There's things that we are taught to make sure it's most effective. We definitely don't want to point a taser at anybody's eye. So even if you guys ever come down here, which I hope you do visit Atlanta one day, if you come by the academy, and I'm still here, I have no problem showing you guys the academy and what we actually do. So that invitation is always open.
All right, Mr. Erickson, you had one more, the closing question on the list.
Yeah, I think you guys may have covered this earlier in the beginning where the question is, when off-duty, not uniform, have you been a target of maybe police harassment or getting pulled over because maybe you feel that you're a target because you're African-American, you're Black, and you're getting pulled over for that reason? If you wanted to add on to that, that'd be great. But I know you guys mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, definitely. Mr. Erickson, class, Atlanta is like this big. Georgia's like this big. Outside of Atlanta, you take 75 South going towards Florida. If I go down there and see my grandparents, I get pulled over every time. So they're definitely, I handle it personally. I don't tell them that I'm an officer because I want to see how they're going to treat me and handle the situation. Because if you do something wrong, I'm going to report you. Then I'm going to let it be known who I am and what I do and what you did. It's important for us to police each other as well. A lot of officers feel that way. Nobody hates a bad cop worse than a good cop. So I handle it the same way when I had that talk with my parents. I always have a gun in the car, sometimes multiple guns. Georgia, we can carry in our cars, of course. So if the officer comes up to my window, I roll my windows down, of course, because I told you guys earlier, my windows are blacker than black. They're blacked out. You can't see anything. So I know as an officer, I'm scared. My heart's pounding because I don't know what I'm walking up to on a traffic stop. Traffic stops are one of the most dangerous things we go to because we never know what's inside the vehicle. And then you have cars flying by also. So I roll down all my windows to come up to the vehicle, give them my license, whatever they ask for, answer the questions if they ask me a question. And I kind of leave it at that. I do because I know what it's like to be on the street. I do tell the officers, hey, I have my personal weapon in the car. It's right. And I tell them where it is. And then most of the time they're like, okay, thanks, appreciate it. Sometimes they say, if you don't mind, for your safety and mine, you mind stepping out the car? No problem. Because I know in their mind, they're worried about whether or not I'm going to reach for something. But I just try to handle it as I would want someone to act on a stop with me. And I try to treat people as I would want them to treat like my mom and my sisters. That's the best thing. And if someone does something wrong, or I had an officer who told me he smelled marijuana coming from my car. After that stop was over, and of course he let me go, and without a ticket or anything, a call was made to that jurisdiction to let them know that officer, of course, needs to be pulled in, and that's what you do. You got to police each other.
Mm-hmm. I definitely say, although we can't control other people, Mr. Erickson and his class, I believe at respect. I start off with respect. Hey, how you doing when I get pulled over? And I do also roll all my windows down because I know I do traffic stops. And when all the windows are rolled down, I feel a little more comfortable. And I just say, hey, how are you? And it starts with a good attitude, you know what I'm saying? So of course officers go through a lot of things throughout their shifts. So why not be the most pleasant one? But yeah, I don't feel that harassment at all because I start off with pleasant, but can't control the other people. But like Sergeant Murphy said, hey, if there's something that needs to be reported, I'm a good cop. I don't like bad cops, and because when a bad cop do something malice, then we have to pay for it, which AKA protests, riots, and property damage. So yeah, we don't like that at all.
I think Ms. Rhonda, was there a couple of questions we skipped or we got them or?
I think we got most of them. Some of them may have been kind of a duplicate of something before. If there's anyone in the class that has a question, though, now's the time because we have come to the end of the questions.
Oh, I see. Does your police department provide up-to-date statistics on use of force by officers? Yes, we keep our statistics, and those are available when requested. And
they're
then,
on the website also.
Yeah, they're on the website. Thank you. And then another one is, what did we skip? Do you think that intimidating presence of police looking more like military force encourages community resistance and distrust? Who asked this? Shelby, listen to me.
Well, hold on. I added on a little bit to Shelby, so you can't.
No,
blame
I know
Shelby
it was you. I blame you. No, it's a great question, and that's what I was going to tell her. It's a great question, Shelby. So when we put on our riot gear, civil disturbance unit gear, we don't want to. Okay, it is hot. It is heavy. It is uncomfortable and it smells like we despise it. However, when someone is throwing a Molotov cocktail at you, or glass bottles, or rocks, or they're shooting off rounds in the air or towards you, you want to have on as much gear as possible to protect yourself, and so you're able to protect others. Now, the equipment we have is not worn on everyday, patrolling. It's what Watson has on right now. It's just normal. However, when situations come and we have to pull those things out and use those things, they're for a reason. We just don't walk to peaceful protests with riot and military gear on. That's not what happens. That's in response to something. And sometimes the public doesn't know, but we may have a threat of something larger. Like a lot of times you guys really don't know the threats that we receive and the heightened sense of security that we have to have, because people use large crowds and other things to do worse things, if you look at any of the attacks, like the Boston bombings, that was just a marathon, but they used the cover of that crowd and those people to do those terrible things. So the SWAT unit does have large vehicles, the trucks, and I've seen those vehicles rip the front of a house off, but there was a person inside holding a family hostage. You would want us to have every piece of equipment possible to save you and your loved ones, and though that equipment only comes out when necessary. So does it cause mistrust? Probably so. One of the chants they say is there's no riot gear, there's no riot here, why are you in riot gear? Right. Yeah, there's no riot here, why are you in riot gear? At the same time they're throwing stuff at us. So it's like I'm not gonna come out there looking like Watson and have a scar going from here to here because I got hit in the head with a glass bottle. I'm sorry, I'm not. I'm gonna have on the shield, I'm gonna have on the helmet, I'm gonna have on the gas mask and everything else because I gotta protect myself. I want to go home to my family too.
And to add, our unit that we're in, when we're coming out with the riot gear, we're in a secondary location, which means we are not allowed at the scene until it's violent. And we know when it's violent because Sarge say, all right, time to gear up. And mind you, we're in a totally separate location away from everything. And then we arrive because what we don't want to do is to excite everyone. And then when we come in these suits, they automatically assume, okay, it's time to move, and then we're gonna be pushed back. So
Like the media doesn't show you guys the peaceful protest for hours and hours and hours and hours before. They show us getting off the bus. Like we've been there all day. We just got there. We literally just got there after they threw stuff and hit the officers. Now we're going to take, what we do is we come in formation. We stand in front of the officers, give the officers who don't have protective gear time to get away. And then we take the brunt of the flying bottles and everything because we are protected. That's what happens. And like I said, that equipment has saved a lot of lives and prevented a lot of injuries. And I'm grateful for the grants in which we were able to get those things because ultimately they help me make sure my guys and myself make it home, and we're able to protect all the citizens of Atlanta and do our jobs.
That's great. Thank you very much. I think unless my students, we've given them, I think, some time to ask some questions. If they do, if you don't mind, I might have them, if they have further questions, put it on a document and email it to you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Once again, thank you so much. This means a lot to myself, the students, and I mean, it's Southeast Iowa. And so this is really, really a great privilege. And I really appreciate you guys taking so much time to answer our questions. And, you know, if you two ever do want to come up to Iowa, I can show you how to, I can show you how to.
You're going to show me a cornfield. I'm coming. I got to see this in person.
We can go cow tipping too, if you want.
Yeah, I did that in high school. It's kind of scary.
I did it in high school. Don't tell my mom.
I know. I see somebody's got somebody got a detention. They got to get some detention hours. So we need to make a list of people we might need to check on.
Well, thank you again. I appreciate it.
No problem.
You know, if I teach this again next trimester, I might be trying to steal you guys again.
No, you know how to find us.
And to your students, I really appreciate the questions. You did an awesome job. You
guys are great.
You did. These were some really nice questions that you asked us, and we gave you nothing but 100%. Again, if Mr. Erickson, if they have some more questions, I'm most definitely don't mind answering them.
That's great. Great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate it. Stay safe. And I'm sorry I think my Chicago Bears beat your Falcons just a few weeks ago. So.
Everybody beat my Falcons, so you're not hurting me. Draft picks.
Bye, guys.
Great. Thank you. Stay safe.
All right. Thank you. Bye.